We all love a good David versus Goliath story. And for a long, long time, the best one in the business world was Netflix versus Blockbuster. It's become this modern legend of how one simple idea could totally upend an empire. Yeah, you know the one I'm talking about, the little red envelope that could. This company completely changed how we watch movies, and in doing that, they turned a global giant into, well, a forgotten relic. It's a foundational story for modern tech and business. But that's where things get really interesting. See, after the victory party was over, Netflix looked around and found itself in a strangely familiar position. It had become the giant, and a whole new generation of hungry disruptors was coming right for its crown. So let's fast forward. By 2017, that triumphant rise felt like ancient history. The company that literally rewrote the rules of entertainment was suddenly fighting for its own survival, but this time on a completely new playing field. Think about it. The old war was simple, right? It was one-on-one against Blockbuster. But the new war? Oh man, it was multi-front chaos. They were fighting against some of the biggest names in tech and media, and every single one of them had deep pockets and their own unique angle of attack. So how did Netflix even get into this spot? To really understand it, we've got to go back and look at how they became the disruptor in the first place. What was their original secret weapon? The legend, as it goes, starts right here, with $40. In 1997, Netflix co-founder Reed Hastings got slapped with a $40 late fee for the movie Apollo 13. And in that moment of pure frustration, a little idea sparked. But look, that fee was just the spark. The real innovation, the actual weapon they built, was an entirely new business model that was perfectly designed to exploit every single weakness of the old guard. This is a classic textbook case of what's called disruptive innovation. It's when a new player comes in and serves a niche that the big guy just ignores. So why are incumbents like Blockbuster so blind to this? It's not just arrogance. Their entire company, their whole structure was built to protect their existing profits. Profits that came from, you guessed it, late fees and physical stores. To adopt the Netflix model would mean killing their main source of cash. They were literally trapped by their own success. And by the time they realized the threat was real, it was way, way too late. And here's exactly how they did it. 4 brilliant moves. First, and this was the killer, no late fees. That was Blockbuster's bread and butter. Second, the insane convenience of getting DVDs by mail. Third, a massive library, because one central warehouse can stock way more movies than thousands of different stores. And fourth, their secret weapon, the recommendation engine, using data to figure out what you wanted to watch next. The irony here is just staggering. In the year 2000, Netflix actually tried to sell itself to Blockbuster for $50 million, and Blockbuster, with its 7,700 stores, famously laughed them out of the room. It has to be one of the biggest strategic blunders in modern business history. So, Netflix won the DVD war. Game over, right? Not even close. Hastings knew the future wasn't in little plastic discs. The next huge challenge was pivoting from those red envelopes to digital streaming, a move that was honestly just as dangerous as the first one. This timeline really shows you what a roller coaster it was. They launched their Watch Instantly streaming service way back in 2008, which was incredibly visionary. But then came the infamous Quickster disaster in 2011, a true near-death experience that forced a total rethink and led them to bet the farm on original content with House of Cards in 2013. Oh man, the Quickster plan. It was such a self-inflicted wound. Netflix decided to split its DVD and streaming businesses into 2 separate companies. For customers who wanted both, it was basically a 60% price hike. The backlash was immediate and brutal. They lost 800,000 subscribers, and their stock price just fell off a cliff, dropping 77%. And yet, and this is the incredible part, they recovered. After they reversed the decision and apologized, the company went on an absolute tear. From just over 23 million subscribers in 2011 to 93 million only 5 years later. It just proved that, despite that massive stumble, their core streaming model was ridiculously powerful. And that brings us right to the battlefield of 2017. Netflix was no longer the scrappy little underdog. Nope, it was a global giant. It was the incumbent. And the new challengers, they weren't anything like Blockbuster. They were smarter, faster, and a whole lot richer. By now, Netflix was fighting a war on 3 major fronts, all at the same time. First, a flood of new, super powerful competitors. Second, the insane escalating cost of content. And third, a totally unpredictable regulatory environment. Just look at this competitive threat. You've got Amazon, which could fund its video service forever with profits from its massive cloud business, AWS. They used Prime Video as a loss leader just to sell more Prime memberships. Then you had Hulu, which was literally owned by the Hollywood studios. Disney, Fox, Comcast, the very companies that made the content, they controlled the pipeline. Against all that, Netflix had a huge subscriber base, but streaming was its only business. That made them incredibly vulnerable. And this brings us to the second front, money. Just to keep the subscribers they had and to compete with these behemoths, Netflix had to spend on a scale that was just almost unimaginable. $6 billion. That's what they planned to spend on content for 2017 alone. That was more than double their total revenue at the time. They were betting the entire company on creating a library of original shows and movies that nobody could ever take away from them. So where did all that money come from? Well, that's the scary part. Debt. By March 2017, they were carrying over $3 billion in long-term debt. It was a total high-wire act. They had to keep adding subscribers just to pay for the content they needed to attract more subscribers. And then, as if that wasn't enough, there was this third front. The rules around net neutrality were completely up in the air. If that policy was repealed, internet providers could suddenly start charging Netflix a toll just to deliver their videos to you. It could have crippled their entire business model, literally overnight. So that was the situation in 2017. Netflix, the company that perfectly executed a disruptive innovation, was now the big guy on the block, facing its very own innovator's dilemma. It's the ultimate business paradox, right? The very strategies that made them so successful, being this nimble, focused content aggregator, they just weren't enough anymore. Now they were in a flat-out fight for survival against giants who own the studios and the very pipes of the internet. Which leaves us with the one big question. Is the cycle of disruption just inevitable? Is every innovator eventually doomed to be replaced by the next big thing? You know, looking at that battlefield back in 2017, it was a terrifyingly real possibility.